Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming back. I'm one of your hosts, Scott, coming to you from Toronto.
And I'm Andy, coming to you from the UK. Were you in another meeting there, Scott, mentally?
I think I might have been. There was a few places I've already been today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back again.
Indeed. And boy, is it still hot and sticky here. If it's not freezing cold, it's the opposite. This is the T Timbits podcast, where we talk about global perspectives on business development to help you prosper. It is the month of August, the dog days of summer. We're talking this month about recruitment and onboarding. And we talked about mutual accountability in onboarding on our last call, on our last episode. I'm still in the headspace of calls and meetings. And, I gave you a hard time about talking about that topic before you get into even the process of actually recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you help build a good case for, let's get into the onboarding considerations first, and then let's get to the recruiting process itself. So here we are. This is the recruiting process, or if you're American, process episode, and we'll get into that. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, Andy, and understanding a little bit more about why that comes second. Before we do, it is your turn to regale us. So take it away.
Well, here we go. It's another Andy story that I had to dig out of the archive just moments before we pressed record. But nonetheless, it shall hopefully add some value to the listeners and keep them entertained long enough to listen to the rest of the episode. Now I've stalled for time for long enough. I shall.
And do you have a story, Andy?
Yeah, no, I do. No, so one of the recent events I was hosting was an all-day festival. I had a few of those recently. Music festival, and this particular one was at a new venue that I was at, and the person who we had running the show had a differing opinion to me about the lineup and the order of play for the artists on the lineup. I allowed him, because it was his role to run the show. I allowed him to go ahead with that, and he went ahead with it, and it was an incredibly effective day. No one dropped out, everyone turned up. We had some really good guests and everything like that. But one thing became very apparent from the very first band, was that the lineup choice was maybe not in the correct order. And what I really appreciated was the fact that after just a few acts, he came up to me and some of the affected acts who'd been bumped from their rightful position, or a higher up lineup. He actually came up to those people and said, I made a mistake when I was planning this, and not everybody should have been playing where they were playing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was incredibly humble of him to do that, and incredibly bold to put his hand up and say, okay, actually,
right,
I made a mistake. And that is often something you don't see in businesses, is people actually putting their hands up and saying that they made a mistake. In fact, it's very rare that you see it at all. And I think he gained a lot of credibility with those bands, and of course with me as well, by being humble enough to accept that maybe sometimes we all make mistakes, we get things wrong. That's perfectly fine. But to own up to it, I think, is something really valuable and very powerful, and makes you a much stronger person than just trying to hide it and bury it.
And as we all know, the most difficult part of that is the very first, sound that you utter. Like getting up the courage to start that sentence.
Yeah,
is the hurdle. Yeah, and something I think is a good reminder, because if you can get past that hesitation, you get the benefit, you get the recovery that comes along with it. So
yeah, and that does tie in slightly to our topic, because I think this is, humbleness, I think, is a value that is very important in salespeople, and effective salespeople, are willing to put their hands up when they make a mistake, but also able to understand why and how to change it and how to improve it, and be able to help customers and prospects to work through their own mistakes and their own bad decisions and handle those in a good way.
Right. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that and giving us that own personal reflection. Moving into our topic here, the recruiting process. Now, we're talking in the context of this podcast specifically about hiring for that business development role, hiring effective salespeople. Now that everybody's listened to our last episode about what you do to onboard them, Andy, what do you do to get them in the door?
Well, it's not so much about how you get them in the door. It's about who you get in the door. It's about making sure that you're hiring effective salespeople, that you are
Mhm.
choosing the right people to get in. So you're not only are you appealing to those people and targeting that audience in the right way,
Mhm.
but you also have a filter yourself to make sure that you are getting the right people in the door.
Mhm.
And I think a trap that companies often fall into when they are trying to recruit for salespeople is that they go at it from the mindset of that they have a problem with their pipeline and they need to, increase their pipeline, grow their pipeline.
Right.
But very often it's not a pipeline problem; it's a people problem
Mhm.
because you've hired the wrong people.
Mhm. So, what's the process for filtering for the right kind of person?
Well, of course, I mean, you've got to interview. Well, first of all, you've got to define what the good salesperson looks like.
Yep.
What are the values that they have? What are the you want to look back at their history and their success in some way, but what you don't want to be recruiting for is the past. And I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
that's often a
Mm.
mistake that a lot of people make, is that they recruit for what you have done and not what you are going to be able to do in the
Right.
future, because you don't know the circumstances. I mean, you can, and I've seen this a lot, is that you have people coming in or potentially coming into a business who have what appears to be a very effective and successful track record in sales, but
Yep.
then it turns out that they were just the head of that team,
Yep.
and there was a lot of people behind the scenes who were opening the doors for them. They were doing all the prospecting for them. They were finding all the leads for them. They were doing the first meeting, and this person was essentially going in and signing the contract. And so
Right.
therefore their numbers look good, and that's what they present. But as soon as you start to challenge them, and this leads into my interviewing part, is that you want them to be able to be effective in the sales process
Yeah.
and at using the sales process in the way that you envisage for your business. So again, you in your business, you have to have a sales process. You have to have defined what the salesperson needs to
Yep.
be doing and how they need to be doing it, and how you expect them to be effective in their role. What's also important is that you don't try and recruit someone who's very, very good at cold calling and opening doors and
Right.
finding opportunities if you actually need an account manager.
Yeah.
And very often, a good account manager and a good, new business salesperson are
Yep.
not the same person. And I think, again, a lot of organizations try and package that into the same person. And yes, of course, a salesperson will do their best to convince you that they're very good at both of those roles, but it's very rare that they are. Someone
Mhm.
who's incredibly good at new business will be less effective at looking after existing customers, and someone who's very, very good and very comfortable at looking after existing customers may be less comfortable at generating new business sales.
Mhm. Um, don't recruit for the past. Don't recruit for the past. That was your
Hmm.
don't recruit for the candidate's past, or don't recruit for your own past, or both.
Yes, both, very much both. As an organization, you want to be moving forward, so
Yeah.
you need someone who is going to help you on that journey, and someone who you believe is able to deliver in your business
Yeah.
to your goals and in your methodology and with
Mhm.
your customers. It doesn't matter if they've worked at a competitor. It doesn't matter if they've had what appears to be a very similar role or a similar titled role in the past. Yes, it's a good indicator, but that's to get them through the door. What you want to do is have an effective interview process where you are asking the right questions, because they will always say the right things.
They will.
So you need to be asking the right questions, and you need someone who's actually going to deliver against
absolutely.
your goals.
Yeah. Um, and so I can imagine two scenarios where you do have that the right kind of infrastructure in place. You have a sales process that you can share
Mm.
with candidates. You have sort of a well-defined sales culture and expectations. And then there's other scenarios where it's kind of sink or swim. It's like, I don't really care what you do, just deliver results.
Mm.
And I think we both probably have an opinion about which one of those two is the ideal approach. But I've seen both from in the market, from people that I've bought from, partnered with, worked for, clients, vendors on our side, and so and I've seen both run successfully. I think the important thing there is, if you are in the scenario where you don't have any of that structure, and it is kind of like, we just need hired guns and you're expected to deliver results, and that's why we're paying you and compensating you well. Here's an email address from the company and a phone. Sell things, please.
Mm.
That you're clear that that's the expectation, and that the infrastructure and resources that you provide are what they are. They're you're probably not going to describe them as minimal, but I would. But you need to articulate that that's the kind of sales organization that you run, so that somebody coming into it who's had experience in an organization or has had no experience knows that they're going to have to, uh, you know, eat what they catch, right? And conversely, I've seen scenarios where there's a very rigorous, well-defined, methodical approach to finding the right customer, ensuring it's a fit process and service, getting them nurtured through the sales process, getting the agreement in place, handing it off to the delivery team, whether that's product or service or whatever. And it is essential for ultimate success and long-term viability of the client that the sales process that's in place is followed, because it's intentional and there's reasons we do it this way to filter the right things and set ourselves up for success and validate and blah 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 blah, or at least establish understanding so that we come in with our eyes wide open. If you hire somebody that's used to being a bit more of a cowboy in that kind of an ecosystem, it will be the same friction, and that person may have been highly successful in a different organization and will just cause chaos in your ecosystem. So both can be successful, and I think it is prudent to think honestly about which kind of an organization you have, what you have in place, and how you can articulate that, because it's got to be a mutual filter.
100%. And this is what I mean by, defining what your ideal salesperson looks like, because knowing that internally and
Mhm.
knowing your culture, knowing your organization, knowing your aspirations is all part of that definition of who you're looking for and how they should be and how they should be
Mhm.
performing. And that allows you to then be quite ruthless with your qualification process,
Yeah.
and test them out, depending on what you're looking for. But can they ask tough questions? Can they handle pressure?
Mhm.
Put them in a funny situation and see how they handle it. And are they able to think strategically, I suppose? what
Right.
what I have seen as being quite effective is one of the organizations over in the southwest of the UK that worked with fairly recently. They had a recruitment process where they actually put the salesperson into role play.
Yeah.
So there and then in the interview, they put them in a role play and said, right, okay, I'd like you to go in the other room. There's a phone in there. Call me and present your
And
offer
sell me
as
this
as
pen. Yeah.
what you're currently selling. Tell me about that. And then what they did is they saw how they handled objections. They saw how they handled the pressure. And then what happened is that they obviously weren't effective in the in the sale process, so that they then gave them feedback, and they saw how they handled the loss, they saw how they were working under pressure, they
Right.
saw how they were thinking on their feet. And the good ones who ended up getting roles, there was a couple of them, and they were genuinely curious about, oh, so how would you have recommended that we did that? How, what can I change in my process to work in your organization?
Mm-hmm.
How can we, how can I personally develop from that? What would you recommend I did differently? And of course, those were curious, and they got the feedback, and there was no ego in there, but they were ambitious still, so they kind of needed to win, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just a case of arguing about the failure, arguing about, oh, well,
Right.
that's not a real scenario, oh, that's not real, in a real scenario it would be different because the customer would know what I was talking about. Coachability, it's very
Mm-hmm.
important,
Mm-hmm.
no matter who you're recruiting, and in whatever, that coachability is
Coachability,
really important.
big time. Absolutely. You need a certain presence. You need a certain, I don't think bravado is the right word, but confidence.
Hmm.
But you need humility, and you need to know sort of when you're out of your depth and when it's better to say, I'm not sure about, the answer to that question, but, let me get back to you. And being able to ask and flex your curiosity and uncover customer needs and whatnot. So definitely setting up those scenarios can be hugely revealing, even though it's a cliche recruiting tactic in the business development sales world. It doesn't matter. Like, you can
No.
still use that one and just get somebody, knock them off balance a bit, because that's going to happen all day, every day,
Yeah.
and get them, to open up. Um, One of the recruiting tactics that we use, that I took from my business coach, sales coach, was to have candidates apply with a video message. So they're not allowed to send in
Yeah.
a resume. It's got to
Very good.
be
Yeah.
a recorded introduction, and ask them a couple of very lightweight questions, because I'm not testing for the answers. I'm testing for getting up the motivation
Mm.
and the courage to take that first step. Back to your story at the beginning of this episode, can you actually turn on your camera, hit record, and show a little bit of vulnerability, and send that through to me? If you
Yeah, I
can't
love that.
do
Yeah.
that, we don't even have a good place to start.
Well,
Now,
that's it.
other
You're not hiring
organizations,
someone. You're not just hiring someone to sit in meetings, are you? You're
well,
driving.
some
You're getting
organizations
someone to
are,
drive organizations. Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
some it's delightful. It's all inbound, and you're just a quoting machine. Great. And
Yeah.
you need somebody behind a desk who can move data around and pull spec sheets and build proposals and send them back out and do that at high volume. So don't use my tactic for that kind of a sales role, but just sharing the one that we use.
No, but it's more a case of, you know, making a hiring process that simulates that sort of pressure and pace and the and the persuasion
Right.
elements of the role, really.
Right. Um, Anything else to add, Andy, or shall we recap?
Nope, I think it's a recap time. It's a recap time. Yeah, no, I was thinking if I needed to add anything else, and I was thinking, no, I'm just going to say the same things in a different way. So, yeah.
Well, I like the don't recruit for the past. I already sort of added emphasis there, and really, it's all about making sure that you're filtering against the established process and culture and infrastructure that you have in place. You're not hiring the individual as much as their compatibility with your with your situation, with your business, with your
Mm,
process, and what you've got set up. Oh, I just recap, but I'll add one more, which is be clear about your onboarding process. Let them know in
yeah.
recruiting how the initial first 90 days is going to go, and what you expect of them in that time frame, because it's probably not going to be um, revenue targets. It's probably going to be behavioral targets in that time frame.
I'm just going to add a little bit to that summary there. It's the key is that this salesperson hiring process, there's a clear objective. It's repeatable within the organization, and just like any sales thing, it's results focused.
Yeah. Yeah. Behaviors or revenue or what have you. Yeah. Gotta put some clear targets about that. That will save you infinite. And don't let that slip. It's so easy to get up to that threshold, realize you're not there, and like, well, maybe this is excuses it or explains it.
Yeah.
Whoa, slippery slope. All right. Thanks, Andy. I have a feeling
Thank
we
you,
could have
Scott.
actually
Thank you.
kept going, but
I think we could, yeah.
future episodes. Thanks, everybody. If you are looking to get in touch, suggest other topics for us to talk about, listening to the back catalog, please go to tandtimbits.com and feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. We'd love it. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.